From missiles flying overhead and tanks rolling down defenses, this is one of many possible scenarios that could unfold if Russia attacks Finland. The extent of the US involvement in a conflict between the two countries would depend on the actions of Russian President Vladimir Putin. A large-scale invasion would provoke a different response from the US than a series of border skirmishes. However, if Putin decided to use nuclear weapons against Finland, the US would respond immediately and with dire consequences. To explore the potential outcomes of a war between Russia and Finland, let's examine various scenarios and consider the level of US intervention. To begin, it's important to emphasize that attacking Finland is not a pressing concern for Russia at the moment. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine is currently occupying the majority of Russian military resources, leaving little room for another invasion. Putin lacks the necessary military personnel, weaponry, and transportation to wage a successful war on multiple fronts. In light of these circumstances, it seems highly improbable that Russia would consider attacking Finland. However, given Putin's past behavior, it cannot be entirely ruled out that he might engage in such a reckless and self-destructive action while already facing defeat in Ukraine. Now, turning our attention to Finland's military capacity and the potential assistance the United States would provide in the event of a Russian attack. Finland's Air Force currently comprises roughly 166 aircraft, with a mere 55 functioning as fighters. Specifically, the US-made McDonnell Douglas FA-18 Hornets. These planes are certainly impressive, but the future acquisition of 64 Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning IIs will undoubtedly enhance Finland's aerial defense capabilities even further. Furthermore, Finland possesses roughly 240 tanks, primarily Leopard 2s, which are widely regarded as one of the most advanced tanks in the world. These tanks have proven to be effective against older Soviet-era tanks, which Russia has been increasingly relying on as their supplies dwindle amidst the conflict in Ukraine. Additionally, Finland has approximately 800 artillery guns and 75 multiple launch rocket system or MLRS vehicles. However, the Finnish Navy is relatively modest, consisting of just 8 fast attack vehicles and a few minesweepers. When compared to the Russian military, even in its depleted state, Finland is clearly outmatched in terms of manpower and weaponry. Nevertheless, in the event of a conflict, Finland would have significant allies, including the United States. Over the years, the US has advocated for agreements that would strengthen Finland's ties to NATO and Europe. Despite the US government's claim of supporting Finland's neutrality, it's highly likely that they had additional motives driven by Finland's strategic location. By fostering closer ties between Finland and the West, it was less likely that communism or other authoritarian regimes could take root in the country, which was a primary goal for the US and much of Europe. Then, in 2016, a bilateral statement of intent was signed by the United States and Finland, with several objectives in mind. One of the primary goals was to, quote, deepen bilateral and multilateral dialogue and defense policies, end quote, which means that the US aimed to work more closely with Finland to ensure its military tactics and procedures were closely aligned with those of the US. This would enable Finland to more easily join NATO in the future, as interoperability between militaries is a requirement for acceptance into the organization. Additionally, the statement of intent aimed to increase the sharing of strategic information between both nations, with a particular focus on Russia, which was a significant concern for both Finland and the US. The bilateral statement of intent signed by the United States and Finland also aimed to increase the planning of joint training exercises. This not only benefited Finland's military, but also set the groundwork for US troops and vessels to be located in and around the area. Additionally, the statement of intent included the US's desire to, quote, increase armament cooperation and collaboration in research, development, test, and evaluation, end quote, indicating a clear intent in militarizing Finland for future cooperation in case their neighbor became aggressive. The statement of intent between the United States and Finland seemed to have been aimed at preparing Finland to join NATO in the future, which could have been a plan to deter Russia while also enabling the US to assist Finland in case of a conflict. Finland and the US have also collaborated on peace support missions, including those led by NATO in the Balkans, Afghanistan, and Iraq. The significant investment of resources, effort, and time in building up Finland's military and updating its tactics by the US means it's unlikely for the US to not respond if Russia ever invaded Finland. At present, Finland and the United States enjoy positive relations, numerous trade agreements, and a strong US investment in supporting pro-Western ideologies and alliances in Finland. Therefore, if Russia were to invade Finland, the US would respond accordingly, with the extent and severity of its response linked to the nature of the attack initiated by Russia against Finland. Here are 4 potential scenarios that could occur if Russia were to attempt to invade Finland. In Scenario 1, if Russia uses tactics similar to those in Ukraine, the United States would likely provide significant military, financial, and humanitarian aid to Finland. While the attacking force may be weaker than the initial invasion of Ukraine due to the toll taken on Russia's military resources, their leadership has demonstrated a willingness to throw large numbers of inexperienced soldiers at a military force with the hope of overwhelming them. In the past, Russia's strategy of overwhelming their opponent with inexperienced troops has occasionally worked, but with severe consequences in terms of casualties and resources. Lessons were learned by the United States and other countries from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. If Russia began deploying troops to Finland's border, the US would not take such actions lightly. When Russia took similar actions in Ukraine, the West threatened sanctions, which were later imposed. However, this did not prevent the invasion from taking place. The United States is committed to providing military aid to Finland and would respond without hesitation if Russia were to invade. The US has increased its military aid to Ukraine as the conflict has progressed and would likely respond more immediately in the event of an invasion of Finland by Russia. In the event of Russia amassing troops on the Finnish border, the United States could take a more aggressive approach by deploying its own forces in a joint operation with Finland acting as a deterrent. This would send a clear message to Russia that any invasion attempt would be met with resistance. If American troops were caught in the crossfire during a Russian invasion, it could be considered an act of war against the United States. In such a scenario, the US could declare war on Russia and claim that they were not only the aggressor, but also intentionally attacked American troops. In the second scenario, Russia could use gray zone tactics and launch conventional missiles into Finland, or disrupt its trading capabilities in the Baltic Sea through blockades. The response of the United States would be different than if there was a full-on invasion. These tactics would be seen as an act of war, but Finland and NATO might not retaliate with force. Russia could launch a disinformation campaign, blaming the West or claiming the missiles were an unintended incident if they were to attack Finland and other European countries to coerce them into making concessions. However, the global community would likely recognize this as an attempt to intimidate Europe. This tactic might have been more successful before the war in Ukraine, but in current times, the United States would not tolerate such actions from Russia. In the event that Putin still initiates an attack, Finland already has some defenses prepared. If Russia were to use missiles or aircraft to assault Finland, the United States would prioritize supplying Finland with the necessary anti-air defense capabilities. Additionally, the United States may increase its military presence in the area to show Russia that further attacks would lead to more severe consequences similar to the first scenario. While it's improbable, the possibility of a nuclear attack by Russia against Finland is worth considering. Finland currently does not possess any nuclear weapons within its borders. Therefore, any such attack on Finland with nuclear weapons would provoke a coordinated global reaction against Russia. Virtually every country, including China, would censure Russia's actions. The United States would promptly elevate its security status, and all three branches of the US nuclear triad would prepare for the launch orders. Strategic locations along the Russian coast would be patrolled by US submarines, while B-2 bombers would penetrate Russian airspace. Land-based ballistic missile command centers would re-examine trajectories over the Arctic to guarantee maximum precision. A nuclear attack on Finland would inevitably escalate tensions between the United States and Russia, potentially leading to a full-blown war. Additionally, NATO countries would ready their nuclear capabilities in anticipation of further missile launches from Putin. The consequences of such a scenario would be catastrophic, approaching an apocalyptic scenario. Although it is improbable, if such an event did occur, the United States would play a crucial role in compelling Putin and Russia to submit to its demands. In the event that the United States deemed that Russia was likely to launch further nuclear attacks against Finland or other nations, it might determine that a counterattack is necessary to convey a definitive message. These strikes would aim at confirmed Russian launch sites to preempt further attacks. However, this course of action could potentially lead to a cycle of retaliations, resulting in large-scale devastation and the loss of countless lives due to radioactive fallout. However, the last and most plausible scenario is that Russia is currently incapable of attacking Finland. Even if the United States has not already extended support to Finland, including providing weapons and conducting joint military operations, Russia lacks the ability to invade another country. Due to the Ukrainian people's determination and the arms supplied by the West, Russia is struggling in the ongoing war in Ukraine. Putin is resorting to conscripting men from across Russia to use as cannon fodder to cling to the little territory still under Russian control. If Russia were to launch any sort of attack against Finland, it would be a fatal mistake, as it would almost certainly lead to the United States and the European Union taking much more aggressive measures, including possibly declaring war on Russia. Given that Russia has struggled to overcome the much smaller Ukrainian military, it is highly unlikely that it could win a war against the United States and its allies. Therefore, the possibility of Russia attacking Finland is extremely slim. However, if Russia were to attack Finland, the United States' reaction would be fast and unrelenting. What do you think? Will Russia be crazy enough to launch an attack on Finland? Comment your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay up to date with our latest uploads.